The assignment came down through the Galactic Council's Military Intelligence Division on a cold morning aboard the observation vessel Kethmora. I stared at the holographic display floating before me, reading the orders 3 times before the reality sank in. Observer Zoyaxthala of the Vorthak Empire, that was me, had been selected to monitor and document human military behavior during their conflict with the Nexri Collective. Consider yourself fortunate, Admiral Korvash had told me during the briefing. Few get to witness the humans in their natural state. Most species surrender when faced with superior numbers. The humans, he paused, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. The humans are different. I had heard the stories, of course. Every species in the galaxy had. Humans were the newcomers, barely 3 centuries since first contact, yet they had already carved out a respectable territory in the Outer Rim. They were known for their unpredictability, their strange customs, and their peculiar approach to warfare. The Galactic Council wanted to understand them better, especially now that they were facing their first major interstellar war. The Nexri Collective was not to be underestimated. They had conquered 17 systems in the past decade, their biomechanical ships swarming through space like metallic locusts. Their warriors were genetically enhanced, standing 3 meters tall with chitinous armor naturally grown from their bodies. They had never lost a war. The smart money was on them steamrolling through human space within 6 months. That was why I was here, cloaked in space aboard the most advanced stealth ship the Vorthak military could provide. My orders were simple: observe, record, analyze, and report. Do not interfere. Do not make contact. Simply watch and learn. The first human colony I observed was called New Aberdeen, a mining world on the edge of human space. The Nexri had been advancing steadily through the system, and intelligence suggested they would hit New Aberdeen within the week. I expected to witness a standard planetary evacuation, followed by a token defense, then surrender or annihilation. I was wrong from the very beginning. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of New Aberdeen's orbital defense platform, and I watched her through my ship's advanced sensors. She was unremarkable by most galactic standards: short, pale-skinned, with brown hair tied back in what humans called a ponytail. By Vorthak measurements, she would barely reach my chest. Yet there was something in her posture, in the way she carried herself, that spoke of absolute confidence. "Reports coming in from the outer system, Captain," said one of her subordinates, a young man whose hand shook slightly as he read from his display. "Nexri fleet detected. Estimated arrival in 18 hours. I leaned forward in my observation chair. This was it. Now I would see how humans responded to impossible odds. The Nexri fleet consisted of 43 bioships, each one capable of cracking a planet's crust. New Aberdeen had 6 orbital platforms and a handful of patrol craft. By any mathematical calculation, resistance was pointless. "Understood," Captain Vasquez replied calmly. "Sound general quarters. All civilians to deep shelters. Activate the mining charges." Mining charges? I quickly accessed the planet's geological data through my ship's databases. New Aberdeen was honeycombed with mining tunnels, some extending deep into the planet's core. Surely they weren't planning to. "Captain," another officer spoke up, "are you certain about the mining charges? If we detonate them while the Nexri are in atmosphere, the planet dies anyway if they take it," Vasquez said matter-of-factly. "At least this way, we take some of them with us. Besides, I don't plan on losing." I found myself confused by her statement. How could she speak of not losing when facing such overwhelming odds? Was this human delusion, or was there something I was missing? The next 18 hours revealed the answer. Instead of preparing for evacuation or surrender, the humans threw themselves into preparations that defied all military logic. They didn't fortify their cities or hide their valuable resources. Instead, they rigged their entire planet to explode. Every mine shaft, every tunnel, every underground facility was packed with explosives. The civilians, rather than panicking, worked alongside the military with grim determination. Children as young as 12 helped carry ammunition. Elderly humans who could barely walk insisted on manning communications equipment. It was as if the entire population had collectively decided that death was preferable to defeat. But it was more than just stubborn courage. As I watched, I began to see the method behind what appeared to be madness. The humans weren't just preparing to die. They were preparing to make their death so costly that the Nexari would regret ever coming to their world. Captain Vasquez had turned her orbital platforms into mobile weapons. Rather than remaining in fixed positions where they could be easily targeted, she had equipped them with massive thruster arrays. They would be able to move, to ram enemy ships if necessary. Each platform was loaded with enough nuclear warheads to level a continent. "If we're going to die," she announced over the planet-wide communication system, "we're going to make sure our story gets told. Every death, every sacrifice, every moment of this battle will be recorded and transmitted to human space. Let them know that New Aberdeen stood, and let the galaxy know what happens when you threaten humanity." When a Nexari fleet finally arrived, I expected a quick orbital bombardment followed by invasion. The bio ships descended through the atmosphere like falling stars, their organic hulls gleaming with an oily sheen. Nexari warriors began dropping from their ships in pods, each one a 3-meter-tall nightmare of claws, natural armor, and bioweapons. That's when I learned my first lesson about human warfare. They don't fight fair. The mining tunnels that I had thought were simple explosives turned out to be something far more sophisticated. As Nexari forces landed and began their advance on population centers, the humans detonated carefully calculated charges that didn't destroy the tunnels, but rather collapsed specific sections. The result was a planet-wide maze of underground passages that only the humans knew how to navigate. Nexari warriors found themselves separated from their units, lost in darkness, picked off one by human soldiers who seemed to appear from nowhere and vanish just as quickly. The humans had turned their entire planet into a weapon. Above ground, Captain Vasquez demonstrated the second lesson. Humans don't know when to quit. When 3 Nexari bio ships cornered her damaged orbital platform, any reasonable commander would have surrendered or at least attempted to escape. Instead, Vasquez ordered her crew to arm every nuclear warhead on the platform and set course directly for the largest enemy ship. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Human Colonial Defense Force. She broadcast on all frequencies as her platform accelerated toward the enemy. I want every Nexari in this system to remember this moment. Remember that humans don't surrender. Remember that every world you take from us will cost you. Remember New Aberdeen. The platform struck the Nexari bio ship at tremendous velocity. The explosion was visible from orbit, a small sun blooming in the planet's atmosphere. When the light faded, both the platform and the bio ship were gone, along with the 2 smaller vessels that had been caught in the blast. But the humans weren't finished. As Nexari forces regrouped and tried to establish control over the planet's surface, they discovered the third lesson about human warfare. Humans are very, very good at making things that explode. The mining charges that I had initially dismissed turned out to be connected to the planet's geothermal core. When the human defenders finally triggered them, they didn't just destroy their own world. They turned it into a weapon that could be felt across the entire system. The explosion cracked New Aberdeen's crust and sent massive chunks of debris hurtling through space at incredible velocities. Several Nexari ships were caught off guard by the planetary fragments and suffered significant damage. Others were forced to retreat to avoid being destroyed by the debris field. In the span of 24 hours, the Nexari had gone from commanding 43 ships to barely 31 functional vessels. They had lost nearly a third of their invasion force, trying to take a single mining world. And the humans had broadcast every moment of it across their entire territory. I sat in my observation chair, staring at the debris field that had once been New Aberdeen, trying to process what I had witnessed. By every measure of military science, the humans had lost. Their world was destroyed, their population dead, their defenses eliminated. Yet somehow, it felt like they had won. The answer came in the intelligence reports that filtered in over the following days. The broadcast from New Aberdeen had reached every human world in the sector. Rather than demoralizing them, it had the opposite effect. Human colonies that the Nexari had expected to surrender without a fight were now fortifying their positions and preparing for similar last stands. More importantly, the story was spreading beyond human space. Other species that had been considering submission to Nexari expansion were reconsidering. If humans were willing to destroy their own worlds rather than surrender them, what would happen when a Nexari faced species that actually had somewhere to retreat to? I began to understand that I wasn't just observing a battle. I was witnessing a fundamental difference in how humans approach the concept of warfare itself. Most species, including my own Vorthack, viewed war as a calculation. You weighed your chances of success against the cost of conflict. When the odds became unfavorable, you negotiated, you retreated, you found another way. Humans didn't seem to calculate odds the same way. For them, there were things worth dying for, and once they decided something fell into that category, mathematical probability became irrelevant. They would continue fighting not because they thought they could win, but because losing was unacceptable. As I prepared my initial report for the Galactic Council, I found myself struggling to find words that could adequately convey what I had observed. How do you explain to a civilization that had mastered the art of calculated surrender that some species simply refused to lose, regardless of the cost? The Nexari fleet continued its advance through human space, but their momentum had been broken. Each world they approached now represented not a quick victory, but a potential New Aberdeen. Their losses mounted with each engagement, not because the humans were winning the battles, but because they were making victory so expensive that it felt like defeat. My orders were to observe 3 more engagements before filing my final report. I settled in for what promised to be a very educational war. The humans had already taught me more about the nature of conflict in a single battle than I had learned in 20 years of military analysis. And I had the distinct feeling that the most important lessons were yet to come. The second engagement I observed took place 3 weeks after the destruction of New Aberdeen in the Kepler 442 system. Unlike the mining world, this was a fully developed human colony with over 8 million inhabitants. The planet, called Haven, was a garden world with vast oceans and continents covered in human cities. It should have been easy prey for the Nexari fleet. The Nexari had learned from their previous encounter. Instead of the overwhelming assault they had used at New Aberdeen, they approached Haven with caution. Admiral Thexmore, the Nexari fleet commander, had studied the human broadcasts carefully. He understood now that these creatures would destroy themselves rather than submit. His strategy had adapted accordingly. "We will not give them the opportunity for martyrdom," he announced to his fleet. "We will blockade the system, cut off all supply lines, and wait. Hunger will accomplish what our weapons could not." It was a sound strategy. The Nexari positioned their remaining 31 bioships at strategic points around the system, creating an impenetrable net. Nothing could get in or out without their permission. They would starve Haven into submission, avoiding the costly frontal assault that had decimated their forces at New Aberdeen. I watched from my cloaked observation post as the blockade took hold. Human cargo ships approaching the system were turned away or destroyed if they attempted to run the blockade. Communications were jammed except for the surrender frequency that the Nexari kept open. It seemed like a perfect plan. That was before I learned about human stubbornness. Governor Marcus Chun was the colonial administrator of Haven, a middle-aged man with graying hair and the soft appearance of someone who had spent his career behind a desk rather than on a battlefield. When a Nexari blockade was announced, his response was recorded and broadcast throughout the system. "The Nexari think they can starve us out," he said, standing in the Colonial Assembly Hall. "They think humans are like other species that will surrender when things get difficult. They're about to learn something about human history. We've survived ice ages, famines, plagues, and wars that consumed entire continents. We didn't give up then, and we won't give up now." I expected empty rhetoric, the kind of speech politicians give to maintain morale while secretly preparing for surrender negotiations. Instead, I watched as the entire planet began transforming itself in ways that defied logical explanation. The humans didn't just implement rationing. They redesigned their entire civilization around the concept of siege warfare. Skyscrapers were converted into vertical farms. Public parks became food production centers. Swimming pools were drained and converted to fish farms. Every available space was dedicated to producing food, water, or materials needed for defense. But it was the industrial transformation that truly astounded me. Haven had been a commercial hub, its factories designed to produce consumer goods and luxury items. Within days, those same factories were churning out weapons, ammunition, and military equipment. The humans had somehow reorganized their entire economy for war production with an efficiency that would have impressed even the most militaristic species. Every citizen is now a soldier, Governor Chen announced during his daily broadcasts. Every building is now a fortress. Every street is now a battlefield. The Nextry want to wait us out? Let them wait. We'll be here when their bio ships start falling apart from old age. The humans began broadcasting their daily activities to the Nextry fleet, almost taunting them with their preparations. Children practiced marksmanship in schools. Elderly humans trained in explosives manufacturing. The entire population was becoming a military force, and they were making sure their enemies knew it. Admiral Thexmore was not impressed. Let them play soldier, he told his officers. Desperation makes creatures do foolish things. When their food runs out, they will surrender like all the others. But the food didn't run out. The humans had calculated their resources with mathematical precision. They had enough stockpiled food for 6 months, and their new farming initiatives would extend that indefinitely. More disturbing to the Nextry was the rate at which human defensive capabilities were growing. I watched through my sensors as Haven's orbital space filled with weapons platforms, mines, and defensive installations. The humans were using their own cargo ships as construction platforms, building a defensive network that grew stronger with each passing day. They weren't just surviving the blockade, they were using it as an opportunity to prepare for the inevitable assault. Where are they getting the materials? One of the Nextry officers asked during an intercepted communication. The answer revealed another aspect of human nature that I was beginning to understand. They were cannibalizing their own civilization to build defenses. Luxury hotels were stripped down to their steel frameworks to provide materials for weapons platforms. Art museums became ammunition factories. The humans were literally transforming their culture into a war machine. After 6 weeks of blockade, Admiral Thexmore received disturbing intelligence reports. The humans weren't weakening. If anything, they were getting stronger. Their defensive preparations were nearing completion, and their population was becoming increasingly militarized. Worse still, human fleets from neighboring systems were massing for a relief operation. We end this now, Thexmore decided, before their reinforcements arrive. The assault on Haven began at dawn on the 43rd day of the blockade. 25 Nextry bio ships descended toward the planet while the remaining 6 maintained the blockade perimeter. It should have been overwhelming force against a besieged population. Instead, I witnessed the most sophisticated defensive battle I had ever seen. The humans had spent their time in siege not just building weapons, but studying their enemy. They had analyzed every Nextry ship movement, every communication pattern, every tactical tendency. When the bio ships entered the planet's atmosphere, they flew directly into a carefully orchestrated trap. The orbital defense platforms that the humans had built weren't just weapons, they were decoys. The real defenses were hidden throughout the system, disguised as space debris or civilian installations. As the Nextry fleet passed what they thought were harmless merchant stations, those installations revealed themselves as heavily armed combat platforms. But the humans had learned something else during their observations. Nextry bio ships, for all their organic adaptability, had a critical weakness. Their living hulls required specific atmospheric conditions to function optimally. The humans had been studying the composition of their enemies' atmosphere requirements for weeks. As the Nexari ships descended toward Haven's surface, the humans released massive quantities of engineered bacteria into the atmosphere. These organisms have been designed specifically to disrupt Nexari bioship hull integrity. It was biological warfare turned against a biological enemy. I watched in fascination as Nexari bioships began developing what could only be described as infections. Their hulls became covered in festering sores, their organic weapons systems began malfunctioning, and their propulsion organs started failing. The humans had turned the planet's entire atmosphere into a weapon. Admiral Thexmore's flagship was among the first to suffer catastrophic failure. As his bioship crashed into Haven's largest ocean, his final transmission was intercepted by human forces. How did they know? How could they possibly know our biological weaknesses? The answer came from Governor Chin himself, broadcasting on all frequencies. We studied you. Every sample of biomatter you left behind at New Aberdeen, every atmospheric reading from your ships, every scan we could take during the blockade. You made one critical mistake, Admiral. You gave humans time to think. The battle for Haven's surface lasted only 6 hours. Nexari warriors who managed to land found themselves facing a population that had spent weeks preparing for exactly this moment. Every building was a fortress, every citizen was a soldier, and every street had been prepared as a killing field. The humans didn't just fight, they adapted their tactics in real time. When Nexari warriors proved too strong for conventional weapons, human defenders switched to tactics designed to exploit their enemy's biological nature. They used sonic weapons tuned to frequencies that disrupted Nexari nervous systems. They deployed chemical weapons specifically designed to attack chitinous armor. Most remarkably, they used the planet's civilian infrastructure as a weapon. The mass transit system had been converted into a network for moving troops and supplies. The water system could be used to flood tunnels where Nexari forces took shelter. Even the planet's weather control systems were weaponized, creating storms and atmospheric conditions that favored human defenders. By the end of the day, the Nexari assault force had been completely destroyed. Of the 25 bioships that had entered Haven's atmosphere, none remained functional. The 6 ships maintaining the blockade found themselves facing a very different situation than they had expected. Human reinforcement fleets were arriving from 3 different systems, and Haven's defenses were stronger than when the battle had started. The humans had used the Nexari assault to test their new weapons and tactics, treating their enemies like experimental subjects. This is Admiral Sarah Torres of the Human Defense Fleet, came the broadcast that reached every ship in the system. To the remaining Nexari forces, you have 30 minutes to begin withdrawal from this system. Any ship that remains after that deadline will be destroyed. This is your only warning. I expected the Nexari commander to negotiate or at least attempt some kind of strategic withdrawal. Instead, Admiral Thexmore's replacement made a decision that surprised everyone involved. We surrender, came the transmission from the lead Nexari bio ship. We formally request safe passage out of human space. It was the first time in recorded history that a Nexari fleet had surrendered. The implications were staggering. The humans had not just defeated their enemies, they had broken them psychologically. The surrender negotiations revealed just how thoroughly the humans had changed the nature of this conflict. They didn't demand tribute or territory. Instead, they required the Nexari to broadcast the details of their defeat to their entire collective. Every Nexari world would know that they had been beaten not by superior numbers or technology, but by human ingenuity and determination. We want every species in the galaxy to understand something, Admiral Torres announced during the surrender ceremony. Humans don't start wars, but we finish them. We don't fight fair, and we don't know how to quit. Any species that decides to test us should study what happened here very carefully. As I compiled my observations from the Battle of Haven, I realized I was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans weren't just winning battles, they were changing the fundamental nature of how wars were fought. They had turned a siege into a trap, transformed their weaknesses into strengths, and used their enemies' own biology against them. More importantly, they had demonstrated that military superiority meant nothing against an opponent who refused to accept the concept of acceptable losses. The Nexari had superior technology, superior numbers, and superior individual warriors. None of that mattered when facing humans who treated every battle as if the survival of their species depended on the outcome. I was beginning to understand why Admiral Corvash had called this assignment fortunate. I wasn't just observing a war, I was watching the emergence of a new type of warfare, one that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. My third observation assignment came with a warning from High Command. The Nexari Collective had regrouped after their defeats at New Aberdeen and Haven, and they were planning something unprecedented. Intelligence suggested they were preparing to use a planet-killer weapon, a bioengineered weapon capable of consuming an entire world's ecosystem within days. The target was Earth itself. I had to request special clearance to observe this engagement. Earth was humanity's homeworld, the center of their civilization and culture. If the Nexari succeeded in destroying it, they would effectively decapitate the human species. But if they failed, the psychological impact might end the war entirely. This will be different, Admiral Corvash informed me during the mission briefing. The humans know what's coming. They've had 3 months to prepare since the intelligence leak. What you observe may challenge everything you think you know about defensive warfare. I arrived in the Sol system aboard an upgraded stealth vessel, positioned myself at the edge of the Kuiper Belt, and began my observations. What I saw defied every principle of military strategy one had ever studied. The humans weren't fortifying Earth. Instead, they appeared to be evacuating it. Massive transport ships moved in continuous streams away from the planet, carrying what appeared to be civilian populations to other worlds in the system. Industrial facilities were being dismantled and relocated to Mars and the asteroid belt. It looked like humanity was abandoning its homeworld without a fight. This made no sense. These were the same humans who had destroyed their own planet at New Aberdeen rather than surrender it. The same humans who had turned a siege into a victory at Haven. Why would they simply abandon Earth? The answer came from an unexpected source, a human named Dr. Elizabeth Kane, director of Earth's Planetary Defense Initiative. Her briefing to the United Earth government was intercepted by my ship's sensors, and it revealed the true scope of human preparation. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Kane announced to the assembly, Operation Genesis is proceeding ahead of schedule. We will be ready when the Nexari arrive. Operation Genesis, as I learned from subsequent intelligence gathering, was not an evacuation. It was the most ambitious military engineering project in recorded galactic history. The humans were not abandoning Earth. They were turning it into the largest weapons platform ever conceived. The evacuations I had observed were actually relocations of non-essential personnel and resources. The humans were stripping their homeworld of everything that wasn't directly related to its defense. But the true nature of their preparations remained hidden until the Nexari fleet arrived. Grand Admiral Kethmos commanded the Nexari force that entered the Sol system. His fleet consisted of over 200 bioships, the largest armada the Collective had ever assembled. At the center of the formation was the Devourer, a bioengineered planet killer the size of a small moon. It was designed to seed a world with organisms that would consume all organic matter within 72 hours. Today we end this war, Kethmos broadcast to his fleet. Today we show the galaxy what happens to species that dare resist the Collective. The humans' homeworld will become a feast for our bioweapons. The Nexari fleet approached Earth with overwhelming confidence. They had learned from their previous defeats and had brought sufficient force to overwhelm any defense. They expected desperate resistance from orbital platforms, followed by a costly but inevitable victory. Instead, they found something that shouldn't have been possible. As the Nexari fleet entered Earth's solar system, they encountered not a planet but a fortress. The humans had spent 3 months transforming their entire homeworld into a weapon system of unimaginable scale. The moon had been converted into a massive railgun platform, its entire structure hollowed out and filled with magnetic acceleration chambers. When it fired, it sent projectiles at significant fractions of light speed toward incoming targets. These weren't conventional shells, they were antimatter-tipped penetrators capable of destroying bioships with single hits. But the moon was just the beginning. As the Nexary fleet advanced, they discovered that the humans had weaponized the entire solar system. The asteroid belt had been converted into a network of automated defense platforms, each one disguised as a normal space rock until it activated its weapon systems. Mars had been turned into a massive shipyard, producing new vessels at an incredible rate. Even Earth's weather had been militarized. The humans had seeded the upper atmosphere with nanoscale machines that could create electromagnetic storms on command. As Nexary bioships entered the atmosphere, they found themselves struck by lightning so powerful it could overload their organic nervous systems. Grand Admiral Kethmos quickly realized he was not facing a conventional planetary defense. How did they build all of this? He demanded of his tactical officers. Intelligence said they were evacuating. Where did this come from? The answer came from Admiral Torres, who was commanding Earth's defense from a hidden bunker deep beneath the planet's crust. Her response was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every ship in the system could hear it. "You want to know how we did this?" she said. "We've been preparing for this moment since first contact. Every human knows that someday, someone would try to destroy our homeworld. We've been ready for that day for 300 years. What I witnessed next changed my understanding of human civilization forever. The industrial facilities that had been dismantled and moved weren't civilian infrastructure. They were camouflaged military production centers that had been operating in secret for centuries. The human economy wasn't just capable of wartime conversion, it had been designed for it from the beginning. The entire human species had been preparing for total war since they first learned they weren't alone in the galaxy. Every human world, every space station, every asteroid mining operation was part of a vast defensive network centered on protecting Earth. The defeats at New Aberdeen and Haven hadn't been desperate last stands, they had been field tests of weapons and tactics developed over generations. As the battle began, I learned the true meaning of human warfare. The Nexary had brought planet-killer weapons, expecting to end the war with a single devastating blow. The humans responded by demonstrating that they had turned their homeworld into something far more dangerous than any weapon the Nexary could deploy. The Devourer, the Nexary bioweapon designed to consume Earth's biosphere, was targeted the moment it entered the system. But instead of trying to destroy it, the humans did something that horrified even me. They captured it. Using massive magnetic fields generated by the moon's weapon systems, human forces managed to disable the Devourer's propulsion organs and drag it into Earth's atmosphere. But it didn't destroy it. Instead, they began studying it in real time, broadcasting their analysis to the entire Nexary fleet. Fascinating, came Dr. Kane's voice over the communication channels. A bioengineered organism designed to reproduce rapidly while consuming organic matter. The neural control system is particularly interesting. We should be able to reverse engineer this within a few hours. The psychological impact on the Nexary forces was immediate and devastating. They had brought their most terrible weapon to Earth, expecting it to end the war. Instead, they watched helplessly as humans calmly dissected it like a laboratory specimen. But the humans weren't finished. As the battle continued, I watched them deploy weapons that shouldn't have been possible for a species that had only recently achieved interstellar travel. They used gravity manipulation technology to create artificial black holes that consumed entire formations of bioships. They deployed swarms of self-replicating drones that learned and adapted to Nexary tactics faster than the organic pilots could respond. Most terrifyingly, they began using captured Nexary biotechnology against its creators. Within hours of studying the Devourer, human scientists had created their own bioweapons specifically designed to target Nexary physiology. They released these organisms into space, where they began infecting and converting enemy bioships. Grand Admiral Keth Moses' command ship was among the first to fall to human bioweapons. As his vessel's organic components turned against him, his final transmission was both desperate and confused. This is impossible. How can a young species possess such advanced technology? The answer came not from human command, but from a source that shocked me to my core. It was my own Admiral Corvash, speaking from a hidden location within the Sol system. Because they're not a young species, Admiral, and we've been helping them prepare for this war for the past 3 centuries. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. The Vorthak Empire, my own people, have been secretly allied with humanity since first contact. Everything I thought I knew about human development, their rapid technological advancement, their sophisticated military tactics, was based on a lie. Observer Zaexala, Admiral Corvash continued, and I realized he was speaking directly to me. Your real mission was never to observe human warfare. It was to witness the culmination of the greatest deception in galactic history. As the battle raged around Earth, Admiral Corvash explained the truth that had been hidden from most of the galaxy. Humanity hadn't suddenly appeared as a spacefaring species 3 centuries ago. They had been carefully guided and prepared by a coalition of elder races who had grown tired of the Nexari collective's expansion. The Vorthak, the Altarians, and several other species have been secretly supporting human development, sharing technology and tactical knowledge while maintaining the fiction that humans were newcomers to galactic civilization. The goal was to create a species capable of stopping the Nexari expansion without revealing the involvement of the established powers. The Nexari collective respects only strength, Admiral Corvash explained. But they also study their enemies carefully. If they knew that elder races were opposing them, they would adapt their strategies accordingly. However, a primitive species that repeatedly defeated them through apparent luck and determination, that creates psychological damage that no amount of tactical adaptation can overcome. I watched as the human deception reached its final stage. The Nexari fleet, facing weapons and tactics they couldn't comprehend, began to break apart psychologically before they were destroyed physically. Ship after ship either surrendered or attempted to flee, their crews unable to accept that they were being defeated by a species they considered inferior. The battle lasted 18 hours, but the outcome was decided in the first 3. The Nexari bioships, designed to be the ultimate expression of their species' biological superiority, were systematically outmatched by human technology that was centuries more advanced than it appeared to be. When the Devourer was finally destroyed after hours of study and experimentation, the explosion was visible throughout the inner solar system. But instead of the world-ending catastrophe the Nexari had planned, it became a celebration of human scientific achievement. We've learned everything we need to know about Nexari bioweapons, Dr. Kane announced. Their entire fleet architecture has a critical vulnerability that we can now exploit. We'll be able to end this war within the month. The surviving Nexari forces, fewer than 30 ships from the original fleet of 200, were offered the same choice that had been given at Haven: surrender and safe passage or complete annihilation. Grand Admiral Kethmos' replacement chose surrender, but his final transmission revealed the true scope of human victory. The collective will not recover from this defeat. Our entire military doctrine was based on the assumption that bioweapons were superior to mechanical technology. The humans have proven that assumption false. As I compiled my final observations, I realized that I had witnessed far more than a battle. I had seen the end of one era of galactic civilization and the beginning of another. The Nexari collective, which had dominated through biological superiority and psychological intimidation, was finished. In their place, humanity would emerge as a major power, backed by a coalition of elder races who had remained hidden for centuries. But the most important lesson wasn't about military tactics or technological superiority. It was about the nature of deception itself. The humans had convinced the galaxy that they were young, inexperienced, and fighting through desperation and determination alone. In reality, they were the culmination of centuries of careful planning and technological development. They had won their war not through superior firepower, but through superior acting. They had made their enemies underestimate them so completely that defeat became inevitable. And in doing so, they had demonstrated a level of strategic thinking that surpassed anything I had previously witnessed. As my stealth ship prepared to return to Vortex space, I received one final transmission from Admiral Corvash. Your report to the Galactic Council will state the humans won through natural innovation and determination. The true nature of Operation Genesis will remain classified for another century. The galaxy isn't ready to know how extensively the elder races can manipulate galactic politics when we choose to do so. I understood the implications. The humans had been a weapon carefully crafted and deployed against the Nextry threat. But now that weapon had proven itself capable of independent action. The question that would define the next era of galactic civilization was simple. What would humanity choose to do with the power they had been given? Looking back at Earth, still glowing with the energy discharges from its planetary defense systems, I suspected the galaxy was about to find out.